Onion Cycles podcast is about thought-provoking, emotion-evoking, action-driven, step-by-step guidance to explore the unique, glorious, and wonderful ocean of your being. Because healing is a multi-layered process of getting to know oneself. Become the self-empowered empiric researcher by discovering the unique layers of your existence. With your host, Nadine Alma, welcome to the Holistic Healing Hub. Welcome to the Onion Cycles podcast.
Hello and welcome back, my beloved fellow healing integrating onions. From my little corner in the world, somewhere in Switzerland, I send to you all my love and all the warmth, especially since the weather is getting so much colder these days. I hope wherever you are, you're safe and you're prepared for another week of recovering, discovering, exploring what we have discussed in our year together. We had the recap and the wrap up of the first quarter of our year together, and today we spend time for the second quarter of the year. And these contain episodes 9 to 21. So many beautiful topics. First, we have the Art of Love series. If you remember that, it was profound and, at least to me, sort of life-changing. Then we explored minimalism and meditation. Lastly, we'll explore the Four Bodies series. So, belt on, leaves up, and let's get to work, because this podcast is all about as I think, so I feel, so I act, and the magic lies in the action. Therefore, you know it, I design for every podcast episode a worksheet. Usually I film myself creating the worksheet, but the wrap up series contains so much information and so many exercises that I created workbooks for these last 4 episodes where we wrap up the whole year together. So if you feel called to do so, I would recommend it, action-based, remember, to go to my website and download the workbook for free. This is on www.wonderfana.org. So head over there, get your workbook, print it out, and then we'll dive straight into the Art of Loving series, which, if you have followed along for all of this year, thank you so much. I feel honored to be able to walk this path with you together. Erich Fromm made an essay, and you can listen to it on the Inarity podcast. I listened to it first on Spotify. And secondly, I then searched the essay on the internet, because you are actually able to download the essay for free and read through it, because every sentence contains so much information. I would highly recommend you check that out. For a quick recap of what we discussed was that he puts two things on the opposite sides of a spectrum. So he discusses how we as a society seem to think that there are three premises in our way of thinking. First is that we are more concerned with being loved than our actual capacity to love. Secondly, we're more concerned with finding the object to love. That is so hard, but being in love with that object once we find it is very easy. And then thirdly, we think that it's all about falling in love rather than being in love, which is sort of a strange way to think in, because falling in love actually oftentimes just happens based on the looks, on the attraction, on what pulls you towards each other, rather than building a future together. What is my moral and ethical compass? What do I want to achieve? What is the things that make my heart soar, right? What are the things that make your heart soar? So like the compatibility factor just gets totally lost if we just focus on we want to fall in love, find the one, and then be loved forever, so that we don't have to do it for ourselves, right? So that's the premise that he asks. Why is it that our society seems to think that is how love works, when in fact he proposes that love is like an art. And any art you want to learn, you have to first get to know everything you can about it. So it's theory. Then you have to practice it. And then you actually go to make it a matter of your ultimate concern, meaning nothing else is as important as getting better at that art form. So you have to have patience, you have to have consistency or discipline, you have to have concentration. I don't think those three traits are kind of like the underlying current of our situation right now, is it? Because we're not really patient. We always have instant gratification to counteract that we don't need to be patient. We are not really good at concentrating anymore, are we? Because what we do most is scroll and switch and just distract ourselves with basically anything. And also discipline, I don't know, I think most of us have to have their to build their own relationship with consistency and discipline. We talked about that in the last wrap up series, and more specifically in the very first episode where we dive into the topic of consistency. So if you feel called to do that, click or go to the first episode and listen back to that. It's very valuable, or so I think. He also dives in the fact every single thing we do, every effort we take, every movie we make, every lyric we write, every poem we read, everything in our life sort of is guided by that strive to find back to oneness. Because he suggests that in the very essence, once the umbilical cord is cut, our first experience of separation kicks in, and that is traumatic. And then our whole life, from the moment when we realize that we are actually autonomous and our mom is there, but we are here, so we are not connected with our mom, we are ourselves, right? So from that moment on, everything in our life gets more into separateness, more separate, and the whole life just wants to get back into union, into oneness. At one ment is what he calls it, which I find lovely. So our whole strive in life and everything as a result out of that strive is connected to wanting to experience love at that level, at that connection, at that intensity that we came to be born with, right? So he suggests that one way we as a society do that is through conformity. Isn't that funny? Like we try to conform to fit in, but in order to fit in, we sort of have to discard certain traits of our personality or our character because we're not welcome as we are. We are not fully accepted when we just are as we are, right? And that leads to a lot of trouble because that means conformity isn't the way to go, because it leads to us using coping mechanisms to then actually fill that void, because conformity can't fill that sense of true union and true oneness. So what we do is we go to sex, we go to drugs, both illegal drugs and legal drugs. So it's both alcohol and like the normal illegal drugs one talks about. And then we have stuff like binge eating, binge watching, binge shopping, everything basically that is out of balance somewhat resembles a coping mechanism that is there because we don't feel full enough. We don't feel whole enough. We don't feel like the essence of us is being able to be lived in the outside world where we find ourselves in. So he proposes that there is another way that we humans try to experience union, which is creating and fusing. So an object outside of us becomes that which that with which we try to fuse. For an artist or a craftsman, for example, the whole process of planning out a project, doing and executing the project, and seeing the result is somewhat of a transcendent experience, if you will. And that mimics that feeling of experiencing union, but only if you have to plan, do, and see the result of that project. If you're just restricted to one of them, or even if you don't even know which part of the cogwheel you are in the machinery of your enterprise, or the job you occupy in your firm, you lose that sense of purpose, you lose that sense of being able through your work to find union and oneness and fulfillment, right? And the other way is with people. So in essence, in a romantic healthy relationship, he proposes that the figures go like this: two become one but stay two. So there's integrity in that relationship, but that can sort of tilt, that can sort of flip around very easily when that relationship becomes immature. So if those parts stick to each other in an unhealthy symbiosis, and he defines masochistic and sadistic relationships as being an expression of an unhealthy relationship where two become one but stay one without the integrity part. So it was quite a fascinating thing to dive into, to view our society from above, bird's eye view, and look into all of the aspects that sort of are pandemics in a way, like mental illness, depression, anxiety. All of these things that surface right now are an expression of not any longer being able to push down, to suppress that feeling that our system doesn't work for us anymore. We need to rethink our approach to love and how we ourselves practice love. So that brings us to the practice part, because all of this was theory, right? So the practice would be for us to first realize that love isn't restricted. It's not restricted to your family, to your romantic partner, to your friends, or to your loved ones. True unconditional love, in essence, can be practiced with anyone. True, a romantic partner has specific traits and specific characteristics that make them stand out as the romantic partner. But the foundation of learning to truly love firstly starts with ourselves and in ourselves, but also is an expression of not exclusively being restricted to a certain circle of people. Meaning, the cashier that you gift with a smile and a thank you, and just be offer kindness to, is as much part of your love practice as when you come home and try to be the partner that your love right now needs, or your love being the partner that you right now need, right? So it's not an exclusive thing just for our inner circle. So that was something that I found very beautiful, and that I started trying to implement as best as I can with the knowledge that I have and experience that I have into my own life. How does it feel to actually love everything, love everyone, and connect, bond, or just respond, or just interact with the people that I meet and the animals that come into my realm and the woods that I tread my foot on with the utmost respect and love and unconditional love, meaning do it with love or don't do it at all, right? So that was an approach that I found fascinating. And then, of course, the topic of self love, of course. So, yes, it doesn't mean that you can't love anyone if you don't have self love. In essence, he proposes that. He says that if you don't truly learn the art of love and start with yourself and then bring that into the outside world, there's always some condition, some thought in the back why you love that person, why you do a thing for that person, why you. So there's always some condition tainting the unconditional, innocent, pure love that he describes. However, I think being humans in or being eternal in a human experience is like The love comes from the realization that the one opposite you is actually a mirror. And even, or most certainly, if they trigger you, they actually present you with a gift, an opportunity to look deep and see in ourselves, oh, wow, that hurt. Why did it hurt? What do I feel when I experienced it last? And how can I comfort myself or that part of myself that experienced that to become integrated again and be a whole person, more holistic inside? Because remember, healing, as it is mostly used, indicates that you're broken, that you need to fix yourself in order to function again. When I say healing, I mean more like integrating. That's why I usually combine integrating healing together to get like the beauty of both words, with my meaning, right? So I feel like whenever you are presented with the opportunity to experience a trigger given to you with enormous generosity by someone else, with their reaction or with their attitude or with their words, then it is an opportunity for you to become a fuller person, right? If you are daring enough to look deep, which is everyone watching this podcast, yeah, you want to go deep because you understand that your soul wants to grow. The soul essence is growth. Brain essence is stay where you are stagnant, because our brain always chooses the uncomfortable known over the maybe comfortable, more growing, more expansive unknown, right? So what he's now suggesting is that start with yourself and also practice these traits that you need for every art to be learned properly, which is consistency. In other words, a promise to yourself that you will honor because you're your best friend, you're your parent, you're your longest standing relationship, right? So honor yourself and the promises you make to yourself by being consistent, and then build your own relationship with consistency by being patient with yourself, with gentleness, with kindness, with being loving to yourself. Because I heard a parent say, I think it was a parent, that they sometimes hate their child, but they still love it. So you don't need to like yourself, but you still have the responsibility to be accountable for how you treat yourself. And that should be lovingly and gentle, and then should be also sometimes being a stern parent and saying, ah, you want to be lazy now, but you know you can do it. You're quite capable today. So get up and just do a little bit of it. Just get started, like that little nudge, you know? And then thirdly, obviously, the concentration part, which I struggle with a lot. I'm sort of training myself to have or lose that short attention span that I acquired through watching short videos and through, I don't know, I think it also started with Netflix. Like, as soon as there were streaming services where you didn't have to wait anymore for a week to have the new series out, and then every week one episode, and you just had to wait, you just had to be patient, and then you would linger for 40 minutes of one episode and you would be totally immersed in that, or you would be totally immersed in a 120-minute movie. And these days I try to just connect through reading with the concentration again, so I always have like some book with something described in there that is not fiction, because in fiction I can just like binge read. But it's about concentration and building concentration again, because we have such a short attention span. It is ridiculous. So yeah, self-love also comes with asking yourself, and that is one exercise in the workbook, which I got actually from one of my favorite teachers and speakers out there, which is Teal Swan. And she made a challenge. I think she does it every year. It's the what would a person who loves themselves do? So throughout one week, I believe it's in the workbook like that, throughout one week or even a month, you're called to, whenever you're confronted with a decision to be made, ask yourself, and the decision you're struggling with, there is no yes, no, there's just this indecision in between. Ask yourself, what would a person who loves themselves do? And that should bring about lovely revelation and epiphanies. The first time I did it, it certainly was like that for me. So maybe you want to share. Sharing is caring, is what we always say. So drop a comment below if you do that challenge, or if you do it at least 1-2 days, what your experience with that challenge is, to ask yourself, what would a person who loves themselves do actually? Interesting, isn't it? And I feel like that would conclude the Art of Love series. That is, I think it was 4 or 5 episodes. That is what I wanted to resurface, bring to the surface again, to just have that nudge into the direction to maybe feel called to listen to all of the episodes again, but certainly tackle what is in the workbook and try to find your own thoughts on the topic just for yourself. Maybe journal about them. I found it very transforming. And with that, once we come to the conclusion that love might be something else that we were taught to believe, conditioned to live by, and conditioned to think in a certain way about, we are then able to dive into the topic of minimalism. Because minimalism does the same thing. You're sort of zoom in onto a specific area in your life and you strip it apart layer by layer like an onion, and then you come to the essence, and then you decide and you look at it. Okay, how does it make me feel? Do I want to let it go? Is it something I need to integrate? Is it something that belongs to me, or is it generational trauma? Is it from my mom? Is it from my dad? Is it from my aunt, or whoever was the main guardian in your life, right? Is it from a whole generation past? Is it from an ethnical group? Whatever it is, you look at it and then you feel into it, and then from there you proceed to sort of make your own mosaic again, and put together what serves you, what you want to be, what you feel called to include in your life. That is minimalism. It's about being more and owning less, because what you own then reflects actually what you want to be. I think it was Jordan Peterson who suggested that if you want to have clarity in your mind, you need to clean out your room and thoroughly. And I feel like that applies for minimalism as well. I think minimalism is also an art form and something that can take years, but also can be like purging. If you feel like cold on a weekend, to just get that closet done and just throw everything out on the bed, and then decide item by item what you want to keep, what will be your capsule wardrobe from now on, that defines who you are and how you feel, right? It can also look like moving, like if you're moving house and you are sort of going through things by nature because you're packing your boxes, and while doing it you say goodbye to some things and bring them away to donate them. However, our approach on minimalism in this series obviously goes more into like the energy of slow living, and therefore being able to be mindful with the process, right? So it's all about giving yourself as much time as you want and need. As always, it is your practice, it is your life. You are the only one who knows how to do it properly so it serves you. So really focus in on how you feel about it and how you want to go about it. And in essence, we discussed that there are certain questions you can ask yourself while doing the process, while tackling a very small thing, like taking 3 items from your household and asking specific questions that are also in the workbook that you want to ask about that specific item, if it should stay or if it shouldn't stay, right? And then you have also the option to have a certain area of your house. Say you want to go through that wardrobe, which is the easiest, but it could also be like beauty products, or it could also be like the clutter drawer. Everyone has a clutter drawer where everything is in, right? So imagine you take that area of your life and then specifically zoom in onto that and prepare three boxes. And the boxes are labeled one to keep, which is a definite yes. If you hold the item in your hand and you say, yes, this is it. The second one is labeled donation. So that is the one item you hold in your hand and you're like, no, that needs to go. And then the third one is going to be an indecisive one where you're not really sure, you don't want to let it go, but you also don't need it on a daily basis. You put it in there and you store all the stuff 1 year in your basement or wherever you have storage room. And then whenever you think about that item during that year, you can take it out and bring it back into your life, or take it out and decide to not bring it back into your life and donate. But in essence, it's about getting clarity. Do I even think about the stuff if it is not in my immediate area? And that concludes the minimalism episode. And from there, we moved on to meditation, which personally I think it's a very small step from minimalism to meditation, because in essence, minimalism really, it gets you into the feeling channel, between feeling thought channel of realizing I'm totally by myself, I'm totally in the now, I'm totally present. And meditation is nothing else. Meditation literally is defined as practice that focuses on mind body connection. So you can approach it in various forms. There is no right or wrong, as long as it calms your mind and as long as you feel like you are in presence, you are here and nowhere else, and afterward you have experienced stillness and you feel balanced again. That is the only requirement. I did an experiment of wanting to do meditation for a whole year. So I had to find very playful approaches too, because sometimes I just was too tired from my day and I would go to bed and I knew, oh, sitting cross-legged and holding my head up, I just want to fall onto my pillow and fall asleep. So I tried out a variety of different approaches. And that went from sound bath, when I just wanted to go to sleep, to a guided meditation for sleep. Then the obvious focusing on your breathing, different breathing techniques. I did find out that I actually, when I'm baking, I'm sort of in the same state of mind where it's just about flow and being present. So there's really no wrong or right. And I just would recommend for you to just try out as many different techniques until you find the tool that works for you. Because this is what the podcast is about. It's about presenting all the tools that cross my way and then make it available to you in a hopefully concise, meaningful way, so that you're curious and you're like, I want to try that out. And then, in essence, decide for yourself if it works for you, if it doesn't. And lastly, we had the Four Bodies series. And that was just the perfect series to come at that point, because at that point we had realized so much already about ourselves, and we have gone down into the more energetic, emotional kind of feeling part. And the four bodies describe nothing else than how each of these bodies interact with each other. The four bodies are the physical body, the one we can touch and feel, the emotional body, the one where you suddenly feel a physical reaction, like if you feel so moved and touched by a movie and then you feel your tears welling up. There's an expression of an emotion that comes from a feeling, right? We had that distinction in the episode about what is emotion, what is a feeling. An emotion is a physiologically experienced feeling. So your eyes, well, your eyes get very burny, and then your tears start to well out. That is a reaction from the emotion welling up, from a feeling that brings you to tears because you see something and you relate to it. And then we also have and a mental body, which is everything about what we think and the inner voices and stuff that goes on here. But that affects the emotions as well, and that affects also a physical body, because what you think you are, right? That is proven. If you think negative thoughts all the time, your health is worse. That has been proven. So every one of those body and the spiritual body as well are interconnected, are communicating with each other, and are actually, if you start building a relationship, first bring the awareness and then start building a relationship with these bodies, a beautiful indicator, just giving you hints on how are we doing. Like, it's basically just, how are we doing? How are we feeling today? And if we feel very tired in our bodies, then rest might be in order for our body. If we feel very in our head and there's energy stuck there, we might need to interrupt the pattern and just get going and just make that energy move. And if we feel very emotional and we might take care of our body, because that's interaction, right? We know that in the physical body is like connected to taking care of the physical body, is connected with diet and exercise and rest, but the same, and hygiene, I would say that too, and the same applies for the other bodies, yet we rarely ever think about it. Like, I think about, oh, I need a shower. But when do I ever think about what is going on with my thoughts? Maybe I need some mental health, mental hygiene day, where I just journal about what's going on up there and what voices are up there, what they are telling me, and how I maybe need to become the observer of the voices. And that is then called mental hygiene or emotional hygiene. A day that is dedicated to your emotions. Scary, isn't it? But going into them and experiencing them on a level where you then are able to look back on where did you have that experience of and feeling of an emotion the very first time. And that is actually also an exercise in the workbook that also comes from Teal Swan, which is called the emotional body healing technique, which is where when you're triggered and a feeling comes up and is expressed as an emotion, and then you sort of go into it and you allow it to take control over you, allow it to be you in that moment, and then you ask, once you're ready, what am I feeling? So you name it specifically, what am I feeling, what emotion is there? And then you go into the question, once you've answered that, when did I feel that the last time in my life? And once you've answered that with a specific situation or place or person that comes up, you ask yourself, when did I feel it the very first time in my life? And beware that the answer might be not cognitive. It might be because we as children experience the world not on a cognitive level for the first 7 years of our lives. We experience the world through a spiritual, emotional, maybe even mental level. And therefore, whatever comes up as an answer to that question, don't judge it, just be with it. It may just be colors, it may be scents, it may be everything. Just trust yourself that your inner being knows how to approach that. But if you feel like, that sounds very unsafe, then do it with the help of a professional, with a therapist, psychologist, whatever you feel drawn to. Just get the help you need, because healing the emotional body is essential to really starting to integrating all of those fragments that resurface when we're triggered and that actually cause so much pain and suffering, not because they're bad, just because they want to point the finger at something that needs to be felt in order to feel a more fulfilled life, in order to experience life on a level that is just so much more beautiful, right? So much more joyful, graceful, light, even. So, let's close this podcast episode by taking 3 deep breaths, because there is a lot of information there, and maybe a lot of things came up for you personally. And I wanted to just drop from all that you heard from the mental plane to your heart center. And just because it is so important to be grateful to yourself, to be absolutely in love with yourself, that you are here today, that you decide every day to become that person you want to be, to heal, integrate what has been hurt, to listen to yourself, to build a relationship with yourself. And everything that comes in here at some point needs to drop down here to be a true experience that then has the impact enabling you to really have the action going on where the magic happens. So I invite you for 3 deep breaths, and then I'm gonna say goodbye. But before we do that, thank you very much for taking the time. This is the noble work. This is the scary work. This is the work that needs courage to flourish. And I thank you very much that you want to become a fuller, holistic expression of yourself. With all my love, until next time, my beloved fellow healing integrating onions.